Good evening and welcome to another Torah study on Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. Before I begin, I would like to dedicate this class tonight, in honor of the quick recovery of my mother-in-law, Golda Miriam Bat Fega Rosa, who is battling in a tremendous way the ailment, and with God's help, we are told that even when a sharp blade is placed over someone's neck, he never give up hope. And as Jews, we are very, very well aware of it. So I do the same, and with the hope that miracles will happen. This week's portion, and thank you very much for joining me in studying Torah in her honor. This week's Torah, we study the portion of Tzav, command. So in honor of my mother-in-law, I would like to go to the end of the portion, towards the end, and discuss something that I think is very appropriate. And that is the Thanksgiving offering. In the Chumash, in the book, in the 5 books of Moses, you can find it in the Gutnik Chumash on page 659. Let me just share with you a very brief background, and then we'll get into some details and some commentary. The Torah tells us, this is the law of the peace offering which you should bring to God. One of the sacrifices a person might bring is a thanksgiving. It is a category on its own, just like sin offering, a holiday, a daily offering. There is another offering when someone experience a great event, a miracle, salvation, change of events where he is extremely lucky. They have to sometimes obligate it. Many times all they are doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They are bringing an offering to God in which the priests benefit from parts of the animal, and parts of it is bringing to God as a thankful offering. Who are the people that must say thank you to God with an offering? So here we have the Talmud, and we have the book of Psalm. And soon we will see why the book of Psalm is so important. Generally speaking, there are 4 categories of people, of men or women, who must bring a thanks offering, a thankful offering to God. And they are not in the proper order, so soon we'll see how the order goes, but they are anyone who crossed the desert. Going across the desert is very dangerous because of lack of water. The place there are many pirates as well as dangerous animals. Category number 2, someone who had left prison. Someone who's imprisoned, a prisoner of war, which was very common, or people who were placed in jail for not making payments, etc. They had no human rights, and at many occasions they'll never be found. So someone who is able to escape or release from prison must say thank you to God by bringing a thankful offering. A third category was someone who was extremely unwell, a sick person who was recovered, someone who suffered an ailment, undergone a major operation. By Jewish law, they should bring a thankful offering. And the fourth one is, I said all 4. So again, desert. Oh, I'm sorry. The fourth one is someone who crossed the sea. Anyone those days, the shipping, the sea voyages were very dangerous. People did not know well in advance where and when a storm is. The ships were not built as well, as strong, and there was no SOS communications. And therefore, someone who crossed the sea and made it in peace, they have to say thank you to God. Today, we don't have a thankful offering, but we have instead the mitzvah of Hagomel, a special prayer, a blessing one recites over the Torah. Men will do it when they are who should be called to the Torah or be honored by the Torah. Women, either they can do it over on the women's section while the Torah is read, or they can ask, if they are married or they are younger, they can ask their husband or the father to do it on their behalf, but they themselves can also recite HaGomel. So these are the 4 categories. Again, crossing the desert, crossing the sea, a prisoner that got released, and finally someone who was not well and was cured. He must say thank you to God, because it's a very dangerous situation in their life, and not always people make it alive. The commentators differ in the order in which the 4 categories follow. The book of Psalm in chapter 107 lists all 4 of the categories, but the order in which the book of Psalm lists them are the following: desert, prisoner, sick, and crossing the sea. The Talmud lists all 4 based on the Psalm, chapter 107, and the Talmud lists them the other way. It says ocean, desert, sick man who got cured, and a prisoner who was released. The commentators ask why the Talmud changed the order from chapter 107. And the commentator, the Tosfot, the commentator to the Talmud, answers the following, and I'm going to read it to you on page 658. Tosfot said, in Psalm, the sequences is desert, imprisonment, illness, and sea journey. That is, the list is in order of danger, with the most dangerous first. However, the Talmud, the sequence is sea, desert, illness, imprisonment, because the list is in order of frequency, with the most common first. The Tosfot tells us that when the Psalm lists the 4, he lists them the 4 in the order of danger. Which is more danger? According to the Psalm, crossing the desert, then comes a prisoner, then a sick man, and then crossing the sea. Which one is the most frequent to happen to humans? That's why the Talmud lists them differently. The Talmud follows ocean is most frequent, desert is second, getting sick is number 3, and the least frequent is a prisoner coming out of jail. That's the Talmud. The problem we have in this week's portion is Rashi lists all 4 in the thankful offering, and Rashi lists them totally different order. Rashi starts with ocean, then desert, then a prisoner, and then a sick man. Not the order of Psalm, not the order of Talmud. In other words, it doesn't list it by the frequent, how often does it happen? It does not list them by the danger, which is most danger, and going on less danger. Ask the Rebbe, number 1, why Rashi did not follow the sequence, the order of the Talmud or the Psalm. Number 2, ask the Rebbe, why from all of them Rashi lists a sick man that was cured in a singular verb. Others, people crossing the sea, he lists them in plural. People crossing the desert is plural. Coming out of jail is plural. But a sick man who got cured, Rashi changed and called and listed in a singular verb. The following is a very, very abbreviated explanation from the Rebbe. The Rebbe tells us that Rashi is teaching us how to teach people anything. Torah, medicine, business, life experience. Says Rashi to us, if you want to teach someone and make sure it's stuck and he remembers it, you must find something that he can relate to. You must connect the teaching to an event in his life. You must make sure that what you talk to him is very relevant to him by giving him examples from his own life experience. So for children, we find examples from toys or games that they're accustomed to. For adults, we find the experience that they follow, businessmen, laymen, homemaker. Each one finds their own examples and life experience, and that's how you relate to them the teaching. That's why, says the Rebbe, the Thanksgiving offering was given to the Jewish people that left Egypt. Because they left Egypt, in order for them to remember and make sure that they understand how to be thankful to God for events that happen to us, Rashi lists it in the way that they can relate to. That's why Rashi puts ocean crossing the sea first, because the Jewish people experienced the split of the Red Sea by living in Egypt. That's an experience that everyone, including children, had experienced. It's something very, very unusual. So he relate to them, they can relate to it. The second on the list, according to Rashi, is desert. Why? Because they live in the desert and they see how dangerous it is to live in the desert. The third one is prisoner that got released. Says the Rebbe that they can relate to it because they know they are prisoners. For 40 years they were imprisoned in the desert. They could not go to Israel. They could not go back. It's a life of a prisoner. That's why it comes third. But a sick man in the desert, people were not sick. By eating the manna, they were so healthy. They didn't use the bathroom. They never visited the doctor. There was no viruses. There was no interaction with other people. And therefore, they never got sick. They were extremely well. And that's why Rashi puts sick man last. And that's why Rashi uses it in a singular verb, because it's extremely unusual, almost never happened, and something they did not have to face in the desert. That's why when Rashi is teaching us about being thankful to God for events, he accepts those four that the Talmud teaches us based on Psalm, but he doesn't follow the sequence of frequency. He does not follow the sequence of danger, but he follows the sequence of how relatable it is to the students. And therefore, he puts in crossing the sea first, living in the desert second, being prisoner in the desert as third, and being a sick person who got cured as last. And that's why I used sick man in a singular verb, because it's actually almost never happened, most likely never happened to them in the desert. According to Hasidic teaching, the Baal Shem Tov instituted that every Friday night, every Jew recites Psalm 107. I am sure you are familiar with the song Yedid Nefesh. It is actually a very, very short part of that psalm. It is part of the Kabbalah, and it is the conclusion of chapter 107. On page 126, we always sing in synagogue, Yedid Nefesh. But if you go 2 pages earlier, you can read chapter 107. It is an additional prayer on Friday evening before Kabbalah Shabbat that the Baal Shem Tov instituted. And the reason he did it is because it says that every single Jew, male or female, throughout the week, they face so many challenges and difficulties that they must be thankful to God. Most likely, they do not face only 1 or 2 of the examples, but all 4. People end up crossing the sea, facing water. People end up crossing the desert. People are a prisoner, live in jail, and people are actually getting sick or in a condition, an altering condition to their life. And that's why, as in a moment I'll explain it in the spiritual sense, that's why the Hasidic communities, everywhere you go, we recite not only Yedid Nefesh, the page 126, but we recite the entire chapter 107, which is the source of the 4 categories for giving thanks to God. And actually, according to spiritual understanding of the neshama, each one of us throughout the week has gone through any of the 4 challenges, because ocean, the water, refers to all the pleasures and all the business ventures and all the busy schedules that we all face, in which we are distracted from the main goal of our life, to serve God, to beautify the universe. So each one of us throughout the week crosses the sea. We go through appointments, we go through difficult situations where our mindset is not placed on the right goal of our life. The same is about a desert. What is a desert? A desert is where there is no water, there is no sustenance, and there are no people living in the desert. The reason is, the spiritual aspect of it is when a person goes through the week and does not feed the soul, the soul gets thirsty and hungry. The soul cannot communicate with another soul. Doing so harms and challenges the soul in a way just like a person crossing the desert. And finally, being prisoner is referring to someone who is unfortunately making the wrong choices and put his soul into jail. When someone disobeys God, when someone makes the wrong decision, his soul ends up in prison. And therefore, during the week, we experience prison as well from our soul perspective. The last one is getting sick. Obviously, if the soul is not sustained or provided with the nurture it needs, and is being put in jail and is thirsty by crossing the desert, the soul gets sick from yearning to God and not being provided the nutrition it deserves, and therefore we are sick. Comes Shabbat, hopefully we pay attention to the soul, and by doing so we are getting re-nurtured and getting cured from the ailments of the week. That's why the Baal Shem Tov instituted chapter 107 to be recited every Friday afternoon on the onset of Shabbat, which includes those 4 categories of people who must say thank you to God. Again, crossing the sea, crossing the desert, someone who was sick, and someone who was out of jail, because the soul of each one of us experiences all 4 in a spiritual sense during the week. But then comes the Rebbe and says that all 4 categories exist in the soul prior to entering the universe. And for that, I want to read the Sparks of Chassidut on page 659. If you have the book, you're welcome to follow. I'll read it as clear as I can. Hasidic thought, as a further sequence of the 4 cases that required a thanksgiving offering, corresponding to the process by which the soul descends into the world. The soul, prior to entering a body to be born, and goes through a process, and that process is, so to say, affecting the soul with all 4 events that we just discussed. Number 1, sick person. When the soul leaves its source, beginning its journey down into the world, the intense love of God, which it experienced previously, is weakened. So the soul becomes sick with a desire to regain its lost love. When the soul is told that it's time to go to the universe, the soul gets sick from the fact that it will not be as close to God as it used to be. Number 2, imprisonment. As the soul descends further downward, it becomes affected by the progressive confinement of the spiritual and physical worlds until it's eventually imprisoned in a body. When the soul is told to coming into the human body is great confinement, as solitary, and that becomes jail for the human soul, for the godly soul. Number 3, sea voyage. While the soul is living in this world, there is the danger that it will drown in the turbulent waters of worldliness and physicality. When the soul comes down to the universe, it's told that the body will make a lot of decisions, and some of it will literally drown the soul and spirituality. So the soul is about to enter an ocean where breathing is going to be extremely difficult. And finally, number 4 is the desert. The soul may regress further, God forbid, to the point that the person lives a life devoid and barren of any spiritual meaning whatsoever. And see, so that's number 4, the desert. The soul enters the human body, will live in a desert where the body does not provide any sustenance, just dry land. There is no plants, there is no water, there is no other people to socialize. And since these challenges are great, the soul is made to swear an oath before it leaves its source, be righteous and don't be wicked, giving it the strength to prevail against all odds. When the soul comes down to the universe, just before, it's given an oath to stick to the goal, to stick to the project, to the program, and never give up. Even when you're in the desert, it's very dry, and or if you're in the ocean, you're drowning, or that you're in imprisonment and you cannot move around, you're not free. Don't give up, keep fighting, never give up, because you will prevail. At the end of the day, there is no doubt. This is the topic of thanksgiving that appears in this week's portion, where God is giving us an opportunity to say thank you. And at the time of the temple, they would say thank you with an offering to God called a thanksgiving offering. And as I shared, there are 4 categories of people's experiences that must be thankful to God. And again, they are desert, ocean, prison, or someone who's sick. Today we do not have offerings as sacrifices, but we can say Hagomel, we can say thank you, God, for saving my life. And actually, in reality, some people, when they experience any of these, will bring a sponsoring an oneg, or some call it seudat oda'ah, a thankful meal. And that's what an oneg is during Shabbat, where many other Jews are congregating together to say brachot, to say blessings, to thank God. And it's all dedicated for the good deed that God has done for that person. I want to move on to the next topic, one more topic, and then maybe another one. And that is, towards the end, God is inaugurating, in this week's portion, inaugurating the tabernacle. The first time God appoints the priests to be the representatives of God and the Jewish people, to serve God on behalf of the Jewish people. And for 7 days, they are inaugurating the temple. Moshe is the leader. Moshe is actually becoming the high priest. He is inaugurating and anointing the priest, the rest of the Aaron and his family. And the 8th day is a time when both serves equally, Aaron and Moshe. It's next week's portion by Yom HaShmini. That's why it's called Shmini next week, because it's number 8, the 8th day. But in the 7 days of the inauguration of the temple, there is a commandment to dismantle the temple every day. At the end of the day, they have to dismantle it and rebuild it, rededicate it in the morning. So they actually took it apart and rebuilt it every day for 7 days. Only at the 8th day, they kept it going, and it stood until they had to move. But what happens to the priests? And for that, we have 2 verses that are very puzzling. And I'm turning to page 671. I'm going to read it, and then I will expand on the commentators. The text reads, we are on chapter 8, verse 33. You should not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days until the concluding days of your days of inauguration. God commands the priests that they must remain in the temple for 7 days. Do not leave the tent of meeting for 7 days. 2 verses later, on page 673, again we read, you should stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days. You must guard your appointed duty to God so that you will not die. God immediately thereafter repeats the same thing, that for 7 days and night they must be at the tent of meeting and guarded, as that is their job. I want to read to you some questions that the commentators are dealing with, and how the Rebbe is responding to it. So the first question we have in Classic Questions, page 671. The question is, if the tabernacle was dismantled at night during the 7 days of inauguration, how could Aaron and his sons stay there for 7 days and nights? We just read, God says you should not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days. Another one reads, you should stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days. If it's so, where did they stay if we are told that every night they had to take apart the temple, the tabernacle? There was no tent of meeting. So the commentators respond 3 answers. Rashi ignores the question. Spono says the outer curtains of the tabernacle were not dismantled. Spono says, yeah, they had to take apart every day the entire temple except the outer curtains, which were a little far from the actual tent, and they stayed unerected for 7 days, and that's where they stayed. Bechaye, another commentator, writes, the Torah does not mean that they were literally not allowed to leave the tabernacle day and night, but rather that any time they were required to be there, they were not permitted to leave, whether it was not day or night. The Bechai says that it doesn't say that they should not live and stay there for 24/7. All it says that they, once they have a job to perform, they must remain in the temple. Ramban Nachmanides says the tabernacle remained erected all night, and at the crack of dawn it was dismantled and immediately reassembled. In this way, it was possible for the priest to stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days. Nachmanides has a whole different understanding. He says, you know what happened? They kept the temple on, and they dismantled it only early in the morning, just for a couple of minutes, and reassembled it. This way, the Aaron's sons were just outside the temple by the entrance. The Rebbe has a problem with this, all the answers. In addition, the Rebbe's problem is, how come Rashi does not address this question? Here is the Rebbe's answer. The Rebbe says, I'm going to read and explain, because I think the Rebbe's language will do justice. The Rebbe asks, throughout the 7 days of inauguration, the tabernacle was erected and dismantled daily. That's where we study. And only on the 8th day did it stand permanently. Thus, many commentators, the Asforno, Bechai, and Ramban, and others, address the obvious question, had the priest did not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days, day and night for 7 days, as we just read, when the tabernacle was clearly dismantled at night, how could the priest possibly stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days when there simply was no entrance at night? If they were disassembled at night, there was no tent of meeting. While the commentators offer various solutions, we would have expected Rashi to answer this basic problem. Apparently, Rashi deemed the answer to be self-evident from the scripture itself or from one of his previous comments, such that Rashi felt the reader could fathom the matter for himself. So what is the explanation of the matter at the literal level? And here is the Rebbe's explanation. The Rebbe says that at first glance, verse 33 and 35 seem to be unnecessarily repetitive. Verse 33 states, you should not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days until the concluding day of your days of inauguration, because you will now be inaugurated for 7 days. Verse 35 appears to repeat the same idea. You should stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days, and you must guard your appointed duty to God. Nevertheless, says the Rebbe, on closer examination, it becomes apparent that those two verses are speaking about two distinct obligations. Says the Rebbe, these two verses are not repetitive, but actually they are talking about two different things. Verse 33 stressed that you should not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting, that is, we are speaking here about a priest who is already inside carrying out his service and is prohibited to leave. This prohibition applies for 7 days, that is, during the daytime only. It says 7 days, says the Rebbe, not night. And it is because you will now be inaugurated for 7 days. In other words, the priest may not leave the tabernacle complex because he's being inaugurated. Says the Rebbe, the commandment is not about the night, it's all about daytime. They must remain within the temple of meeting, the tent of meeting. On the other hand, verse 35 instructs, you should stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting, which is clearly speaking to a person who is already outside and is required not to distance himself further. This applies day and night for 7 days. That is, at any time when the priest has left the tabernacle complex, when he is not performing his service, and the reason for the prohibition is because you must guard your appointed duty to God. That is to guard the tabernacle and its contents. Since all these details are self-evident from the verses himself, Rashi did not want to address. Says the Rebbe, these are two separate commands. He does not see the problem. The first one talks about 7 days, not 7 days and nights. It's about people who are already serving God, and therefore the part of their inauguration, they must remain inside and not allowed to leave. But at night, they go home to sleep. And the temple is actually being taken apart for the entire night. But because part of the service of God is to guard and show the respect to the tent of meeting as a house of God, therefore there were some priests that had to be outside, and they had to remain there day and night, regardless if the temple is erected or not. And this is the conclusion of our study today. I want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom, and I hope that we meet again before Passover. We have the opportunity to meet and share good news.
Thank
Be well,
you.
everybody.